Hi, I'm Marci Kobayashi, and I'm back again with another excerpt from Finding Yoyu. And if you've been following along, then you know that last week I was talking about a day when I had to change up my schedule so that I could take my father-in-law to a doctor's appointment, which was fine, but it was something I wasn't expecting, and I was a little upset about it. Well, I did find my peace again and was able to go on with my day, and I want to pick up today with where that left off right after we got back from the doctor's appointment. So I'll jump right in. Otosan's appointment took barely 5 minutes, and we were back home within an hour. At lunchtime, I took Otosan a tray with bean buns and tea to wash down his afternoon medication. He wolfed down the buns within minutes. I was grateful he was so easy to cook for and please. I always enjoyed cooking. It was a way for me to escape and be creative. I loved to take the bits and pieces left over in the refrigerator and create something delicious. Fortunately, Otosan would happily eat anything I served, but was especially happy if it was sweet. He never complained, even when I was pretty sure he didn't like what he was eating. If I asked, he said he had been a soldier and that soldiers would eat anything. Over time, I learned to adjust my recipes so they weren't too spicy nor too sour. Growing up, I was allergic to milk, wheat, eggs, and citrus fruits. By the time I got into grade school, I could tolerate eggs and citrus fruits, but not milk or wheat. Finding anything wheat-free was next to impossible in the 70s in the US. Eating school lunches was out of the question, and going to birthday parties or eating out at a restaurant required careful planning. Rice was my staple, which made it easy for me to fall in love with the food in Japan. I could always find something to eat, even at restaurants. Allergies also helped me become proficient and creative in the kitchen from an early age. My mom was really good about finding alternatives that allowed her to serve family favorites and keep me included. For example, on spaghetti night, while everyone else had sauce over noodles, I poured sauce on my rice. I knew how to set our rice cooker long before most families in our area even knew rice cookers existed. Growing up on rice instead of bread also made it easy for me to cook for Otosan. At least that is what most people assumed. The funny thing was that for all the years of growing and eating rice, given a choice, Otosan would always choose bread over rice, especially if it was filled with something sweet. His all-time favorite food was yokan, a sweet bean jelly, and next to yokan, his favorite was ampang, a small bun filled with sweet bean paste. Though it wasn't hard to please Otosan, mealtime started to feel like a burden once he came to live with us because I suddenly had to prepare 3 meals a day. I was so grateful when he suggested that all he needed for lunch was a packet of bean buns. Available at any grocery store or convenience store, those 5-bun packets became my savior. Otosan was thrilled. He happily ate 5 buns every day for lunch for months. I knew it wasn't healthy. I knew that all that sugar was not good for anyone. The more I read about Alzheimer's, the more I suspected that Otosan's addiction to sugar and ability to eat a whole bag of candy in one sitting were probably related to his dementia, or vice versa. Allowing Otosan to indulge in so much sugar weighed on me. However, I couldn't convince him of any reason not to eat it. He was not overweight, and unbelievably, nor was he diabetic. And besides, it was so much easier for me, and he was so much happier eating those sweet bean buns for lunch. Still, I fretted over those bean buns. I firmly believed that we could heal anything if we changed the way we ate. My bookshelves were lined with books on macrobiotics, whole foods, natural healing, fasting, herbal remedies, and juicing. I didn't know what, but I was pretty sure we could do something to help Otosan slow down the progression of Alzheimer's. But Otosan had to be willing, and I knew he wasn't willing to give up the bean buns. Shortly after Otosan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, a friend introduced me to Dave Asprey's podcast. In episode 13, he interviews Dr. Mary Newport, the author of Alzheimer's Disease, What If There Was a Cure? The Story of Ketones. The Japanese translation of Dr. Newport's book had just been released, so Akira read along with me. We got excited about trying some of the recipes, and especially those with coconut oil. The Costco in Machida, not far from our condo, had just started carrying coconut oil in big tubs. And yes, there is a Costco in Japan. From what we read, coconut oil was like fuel for the brain, especially for people with Alzheimer's. Other than watching TV, Otosan wasn't motivated to do anything. I would catch him sitting on his bed, staring off into space. If I invited him to do something, he would, but he wasn't proactive. We didn't know if it was related to Alzheimer's, having moved to a new environment, or both. We were hopeful that by introducing some of the new recipes, we might see an improvement. In the meantime, we were also trying to find things to do that might interest Otosan. Now that his pachinko binge was over, he needed something to do besides watching TV. In Hiroshima, he had always been outside. He'd always been busy outside. He had the rice fields and his big garden where he grew carrots, potatoes, green beans, tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplants, pumpkins, cabbage, and more. The balcony off of our living room was tiny compared with the family property in Hiroshima. It got good sunlight, though, so we bought several planter boxes, bags of potting soil, fertilizer, and seeds. Otosan helped us pick out everything and seemed genuinely interested. However, it had all been sitting there on the balcony untouched for weeks. Then an interesting thing happened. One morning after breakfast, I served coffee as usual. Otosan loved coffee, especially if it had a lot of milk and sugar. This time, I made the coffee bulletproof style like Dave Asprey teaches, because it was supposed to be good for the brain. The recipe called for MCT oil, and I couldn't find any, so I used coconut oil instead. Considering his sweet tooth, I guessed that Otosan wouldn't mind the natural sweet fragrance of the coconut oil. I was right. He drank the coffee down and smacked his lips, saying "umai," or delicious in Japanese. About 20 minutes later, we were stunned when Otosan got up, went out onto the balcony, and began preparing the planter boxes. We observed Otosan over the next few weeks. Even though we had coffee every day, he always seemed more alert and active after having bulletproof-style coffee. Unfortunately, Otosan overheard me telling one of the relatives about MCT oil, coconut oil, and especially his energetic reaction to the coffee. The next day, Otosan refused to drink the coffee. He said it tasted funny. What triggered Otosan to refuse the coffee that day? I wondered how much he really understood. I could have sat down and tried to tell him more about his condition. I could have encouraged him to join me in trying different recipes. I could have monitored his reaction to the recipes and been vigilant about what he ate. Instead, I gave Otosan a fresh cup of regular coffee with regular milk and regular sugar. Then I gave him sweet bean buns for lunch. I stuffed my reservations down deep and prayed I could make up for the sugar with a healthy breakfast and dinner. Okay, that's all for today. I wish if I could back up to where I was at then, that I knew some of the information I know today, but some of it wasn't available to me readily. Now we have doctors like Dr. Bredesen or Dr. Gundry, and of course Dr. Newport. Lots of people who have talked more and more about how we can change our diets and how that can help us. And I didn't have anybody I could consult with. Now I've got my brother-in-law, Dr. Mufarreh, who specializes in this. And I wish that I had known to consult with him more then. And now there are these other resources that are available. So if you know somebody, I hope you'll check out some of these doctors and what they are saying about how we can change our bodies and in many cases reverse some of the things we're seeing with Alzheimer's. So I'll put some information in the notes below in the video and also on my website. But at the time I didn't know, and I did the best I could. I wish I could turn back the clock a little. Things are a little bit out of my hands now, but maybe they're not out of your hands. So I hope that you will check out some of the resources that I'll put below. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week. Bye for now.